Hello, my name is Michael Amini. I'm from Kootenai Kebab here in Trail, and we are at Trail's Incredible Farmers Market, shopping today for the ingredients for an Ethiopian lamb stew called Saga Tib. All right, so we are back here at Kootenai Kebab here in Trail. It is our Persian restaurant that also specializes in some Greek, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean foods as well. We offer soups, salads, authentic kebabs, donairs, and lots of other delicious stuff. But today we're going to be preparing an Ethiopian lamb stew that will pair beautifully with our Persian style rice. And every now and again we'll serve this as an in-house special, but today we're making it so that you folks can make it at home for yourself. Working with me here is Rebecca from Trail's Incredible Farmers Market. She's helping me slice up onions and all the other veggies to go into our stew. There we go. Big thin slices, we'll puree them into the sauce. These were 2 of the huge Walla Walla onions we got. If you want to just use yellow onions, you need probably 3 or 4. And then these were green bell peppers, had about 3 or 4 of them. Nice big chunks. They're going to cook down quite a bit in the stew anyways. So with the Swiss chard, or spinach if you want to substitute that in, we're just going to cut the stems off. And after we wash them, we'll cut these into some thin slices, sort of like this. And they'll wilt up really nice and add a beautiful flavor to the stew. And Rebecca's gonna finish these off for me, okay? All right, so we're just washing off our tomatoes. Just a little bit of soapy water to get all the dirt off. It's not gonna hurt it at all. So then we can chop them up and put them into the stew to make the nice sauce for the whole thing. All right, we've got our 2 pounds of tomatoes washed and rinsed, ready for chopping. And here we're just chopping the tomatoes into nice big chunks, stems and all, because we're going to be blending them anyway, and it's just going to taste absolutely perfect. These look delicious. All right, now that we're all done with the charred stems, we can discard them and put them into the compost bin to take home. All right, so now we want to use 1 whole garlic bulb, anywhere between 4 and 10 cloves, depending on the size of the garlic you have. We've got around 7 or 8 here. And we're just gonna go through and smash them and chop them up nice and fine. Okay. So we're just dicing up the garlic here real small. It doesn't have to be this small for your stew, because just like the tomatoes and onions, we are going to be blending it, but this is just how I like to chop it. Alright, so now we're just going to go through and chop our kale up. All we're going to do is just remove the stems on either side here and get to nice smallish leaf sizes like this. Once they're all chopped up, they go into the salad spinner and for washing up after we're done. So now we're just gonna wash and spin our kale so that it's fresh and ready to go. Get all that water out of there. Do it one more time just to be sure. Restaurant quality, you know? All right, that's all set. So we're just gonna rinse off this chard, get it nice and clean. Make sure you turn it all around so you get every part. And hold it tight, get it all the water out of there. And that's all set for later. So for the chard, we're just slicing it up into relatively small leaves like this, because when we cook it up, it's going to wilt quite a bit and not take up nearly as much space. All right, so we got 3 or 4 russet potatoes there. Earlier I came and peeled and chopped them all into nice big chunks. They'll break down a little as we cook, but ideally they'll stay like this as best as we can. And then we got our lamb stew, nice and thawed, and this is gonna go beautifully in with all the fat and everything. It's going to be delicious. All right, so we got our pan going. Ideally, you want to use kind of a deep saucepan like this. Even a soup pot will work. And just take some nice salted butter. We got good Canadian butter here. I like to chop it up sort of thin so that it melts more quickly. And that'll just go in there. And we'll just wait for that to melt before we add in our lamb. Alright, so once the butter is melted, we want to bring in our lamb. Just drop it right in there. We're going to give it a few minutes to brown through, but we're not going to cook it all the way through just yet. So that way the lamb can cook as it stews in. Just cover it nicely with all the butter so that the butter gets the nice lamb flavor in there for the sauce that we're going to be preparing. And as you see, the lamb starts to brown right away, which is good. We want just that to happen on the outside only so that it doesn't cook all the way through. Just get all the, should I say bacteria? Just get all the bacteria and stuff out of there early so that way we're nice and safe as we're cooking. We'll give that a few minutes. Once it's browned, we'll pull it out of there. All right, so now that our lamb is nice and browned, we're just gonna pull it out of here, keeping as much juice and butter and fat in the pan as we can, because this is going to go towards making the sauce. Turn off that heat. So the butter now has gotten the flavor of the lamb meat and the lamb fat into it, so that way as we stew the vegetables, they will absorb the flavor of it as well. Then we'll just bring that over here. Best to cover it with some plastic wrap or wrap it in foil if you can to keep all the heat and the moisture in with the lamb, and we'll save that for later. Okay. Next step, onions going in. Turns out this is more onions than we'll need. That's good. And you just want to fry these until they're nice and translucent, about 5 to 10 minutes depending on the heat of your stove. Roll. All right, so our onions have softened up quite a bit. Time to add in our garlic. Garlic just needs to fry in for about a minute to get the flavor in, and then we're going to add our Burberry spice. All right, now that our garlic has cooked in a bit, we're going to add our Burberry spice. This is an Ethiopian spice blend. It's got turmeric, paprika, salt, pepper, cumin, ginger, allspice, cloves, lots of good stuff. Very similar taste to Indian style cooking, but without the curry. And that'll go in now as well. I want to fry that in with the onions and the garlic so the spices get nice and toasted up. And this way they'll infuse. Oh yeah, beautiful color with this. It's mostly from the turmeric that gets it, but everything else helps. And the smell is absolutely incredible. So I want to fry that in for about a minute or so, and then we'll add the tomatoes. And that will be the second to last step in making the sauce for this stew. So now that our spices have toasted in well, we're going to add in our whole tomatoes. Well, chopped tomatoes, but every part of them. And mix these in too. And these, as they cook in, are just going to get nice and watery, and they're going to provide the base for the sauce. Once those are in, cover it up, turn our heat down a little bit, and just let it sit. It's going to take about 5 to 10 minutes for those to get where they need to be. So our tomatoes have simmered down. As we can see, the stew is nice and watery now. So the next step is to get this out of here and blend it up. So bring the pan over, dump it into something to help you blend. If your pot is deep enough, you can do this right in the pot. Otherwise, and you can use a regular blender as well. Just make sure you're careful about it and keep your lid on, and make sure you use a spatula to get out everything that you can. Then once we're in here, with our immersion blender, one thing you got to be careful of with the immersion blender: don't take it out while it's still spinning. Just check it through there, make sure we got all our chunks. One big chunk right there. All right, and that's ready to go. And hint, hint, if you wanted to stop here, you've got spicy tomato soup. Just gonna taste this, make sure it's nice and good. I love it. If it's too spicy, you can always add some extra tomatoes while you're stewing it, or some lemon juice to cut that heat, but it's delicious as it is. All right, now that we've got our puree, we're going to put that right back into the pan. And into here go the peppers. Gonna drain this real quick. Oops. Make sure you drain your potatoes before you add them in. Just give that a nice stir around. And depending on how watery your tomatoes were, you can add a cup or two of water to this as well. I'm going to add 1 cup just to make sure that the potatoes cook through nicely. And don't worry about if you add too much water, because as you cook it, it will simmer down and thicken up anyways. We're going to let this get back up to boiling, and when it boils, then we'll add our lamb back in, and that will start to stew and soften up as well. Alright, so now our stew is up to bubbling and boiling, so we can add in our lamb. Get all that juice in there so it's nice and flavorful. And then this, we just want to let it simmer and stew on low heat for at least half an hour. Nice long time. The longer you let it stew, the better. You can go into an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever you feel like. Just be careful that if you're stewing it, that your sauce doesn't get too thick. You might need to add some water again later, but otherwise you should be okay. And we're just waiting for the potatoes to cook through and the peppers to get nice and soft in preparation for the very last step. All right, so the last step, now that we've let our potatoes simmer, and we just check it by just taking one and kind of press it against the side. If it crumbles, you know you're good to go. We don't want them soft like breaking down, but nice and chunky is good, ready to go. Then, doesn't matter if you do your kale or your spinach or your chard first, you just want to put them in nice and slowly. And don't worry about how big they are because they will wilt. And you just mix them in nice and slow and add more as you can. And as I said, you can substitute any kind of greens. Even sliced cabbage is really nice for this, but I like chard and spinach and kale are my favorites for it. Okay. And as it's going, as it wilts, just keep on adding. You can't really overdo it with this part. And this just takes it from kind of healthy to really healthy. And once it's all in there, just let it simmer for another 5 or 10 minutes to get the flavor of the greens in there, and then you're all set. All right, so our stew is ready to go. It's been sitting with the greens in there, and we're just gonna get a few scoops into a dish. Make sure we get some lamb in there for you. And some nice baked potato chunks. And now if you were to come here to Kootenai Kebab, because we're Persian, we'll serve it with some nice saffron rice. A sprinkle of parsley in there. If you're at home, you can garnish this with cilantro as well. A little bit of lemon to squeeze in. We always serve with a pickle and olive as well. And a nice little bit of what we call salad jafari, which just means parsley salad, but it's also got some tomato, onion, and sumac in there as well. And voila! There is your lamb tibs to enjoy. All right, now that our dish is prepared, we're gonna serve lunch. And here we go, out into our beautiful dining room. And we're giving Rebecca her lunch as a thank you for all of her hard work.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You just wanna scoop a bit of that into your rice, mix it in, squeeze some lemon juice in it if you'd like, and enjoy it with that salad. And we're also gonna enjoy this with a glass of Columbia Gardens wine here from Fruitvale, and it's a fauche red that pairs beautifully with this lamb. And there you are.
Really good, thank you.
You're really good? All right, you're very welcome. Thank you.